In a search for more clues, Joanne and Jill are trawling through the Egyptian archives at the Literary and Philosophical Society Library in Newcastle. It has an extensive historical collection of books, periodicals and newspaper reports, charting the birth of Egyptology as a science in the early 19th century. The Society hosted a public exhibition of the mummy when it first arrived in the country almost 200 years ago in 1821.
All right. Oh, what you got there?
Oh, lots of treats for us to look at.
Excellent.
I've come across this one, which actually looked quite interesting. It's the reports, papers and catalogues of the Literary and Philosophical Society from Newcastle upon Tyne, 1820 to 1821, so that's coinciding with our date. But if we have a look through, it's quite a strange book in its nature. It's more like a scrapbook, actually, and I think if we just have a sort through.
Oh, yeah.
It's all
handwriting.
Yeah. Very beautiful handwriting, but then you've got small articles.
Like newspaper clippings.
Like newspaper clippings.
But the book contains more than just newspaper articles. It's about to reveal a very big clue.
Okay, well, that's interesting.
A specimen of the cloth and cord taken from the mummy at the Literary and Philosophical Society, Newcastle on Tyne. I'll let you do, be honest.
Here we go, very, very careful. What a result.
That's incredible.
Look at that. They have kept it in a book.
That's fabulous.
That's for over 200 years.
It's still very dusty.
It is, yeah, let's close it up.
That is, I've just breathed in that tone, that terrifies. What a discovery. You don't usually make archaeological discoveries in a library, do you?
From the start of the investigation, the team had no access to the mummy or interior of the coffin, so the finding of these linen samples is a huge breakthrough. Tiny fragments of the linen wrappings are cut off to be taken away for chemical analysis in Stephen's lab. The entire embalming process would take around 70 days and was performed by priests and embalmers who had a detailed knowledge of the human anatomy. Some organs would be removed to avoid decay. The body cavity was then packed with linen and spices before the body was finally wrapped in many layers of linen cloth. It's these linen wrappings that Stephen is analysing for their chemical fingerprint. Through GCMS, gas chromatography, mass spectrometry, he will be able to identify the chemical compounds present on the linen sample. The technique works on the principle that every chemical turns to a gas at a specific temperature. By gradually heating the microscopic samples taken from the linen, it should reveal the many hundreds of compounds it contains by examining the point at which they turn to gas. This will provide a chemical fingerprint of each of the components used to embalm the mummy.
Well, I've never sampled from a book before, but it's looking quite interesting. And what we actually have is a ruminant fat mixed with castor oil, balsam, a trace of coniferous and a trace of beeswax.
Is that all?
Yes, that's all.
So nothing particularly exotic?
No, not really, no.
Well, surely you'd expect a few more exotic commodities, given the status of this woman. That sounds rather like a collection of somewhat mundane ingredients.
There does seem to be a contradiction here between the materials used and the quality of the cartonnage we see. So I suppose that the question we should think about is why. But you see here the combustion markers, which we see if something is being very strongly heated. So it perhaps suggests that someone was in a rush rather than doing a good job.
The GCMS test has not only identified that relatively cheap materials were used in this embalming, but also that the materials used had been severely overheated. This correlates with the result from the three-dimensional print of the mummy's head, displaying large amounts of decomposition, also indicating an incompetent and rushed embalming. This is highly suspicious, as the mummification of members of Egyptian high society was a precise and delicate art.
No, it just doesn't add up. The way she was mummified, the ingredients aren't what one would expect, given her apparent status. So what's going on?
I'm not quite sure. And possibly suggests something a little sinister.
The results of the chemical analysis indicate that the violent stabbing of Bakhten-Hor was just the first of a series of heinous crimes to be committed against this Egyptian woman. Professor Don Brothwell has been conducting further analysis. He's a leading physical anthropologist who specializes in paleopathology and in analyzing anomalies in the human anatomy. Using the three-dimensional data from the CT scan, he's identified a shocking new development.
Well, I've been looking through this area of the head and neck. So if we get these CT scans and move through from the face back into the throat area there, first of all, you can see the tongue in the jaw. And as you move back towards the neck region, nothing then in the throat area. There's no windpipe running there at all. Well, they've slit under the tongue, removed the windpipe and so on, cleaned it up, and then inserted a large wad of, I would think, linen or something of that sort of. I mean, my feeling is that that was a decision which they took for some carefully thought out reason, and it might have in fact, infringed the usual policies in terms of embalming.
So you're saying this was a premeditated move?
A part of their technique.
Yeah, which is something I've never seen in any of the mummy. The complete removal of this part of the body. Well, it wasn't a standard part of the procedure, was it?
Well, it is here.
Of all the human organs required after death, the throat was one of the most important for ancient Egyptians. According to their belief system, the deceased had to be able to speak his or her own name to the god Osiris, lord of the afterlife, to then be judged upon entry into the eternal paradise for the soul. In the eyes of ancient Egyptians, removal of the throat during mummification would prevent this sacred ritual from taking place.
Why take out the throat, the voice box, the very organs that are required, we know, to breathe again in the next world, to speak your name in the next world? When she's there before the gods, she physically cannot speak her name before them. She can't identify herself. The Gartanash can't identify her. So it does give me some cause for concern, I think.
From the very beginning, this case of the sealed coffin looked almost impossible, as the mummy investigation team were denied any kind of access to the body. Against all odds, and through a combination of forensic excellence and old-fashioned detective work, they built an incredible picture of who this woman was and how she died.
Based on her overbite, we can say with some confidence that she was likely of high status.
Well, from the chemistry, it's certainly possible that some sort of concealment was going on.
I'll go further than that. I think this is an assassination.
There's the family, there's the scribes, and there's the priesthood. But it could have been any of the three.
Without even laying a finger on the body, The mummy investigation team has discovered that this woman was murdered by a savage knife attack to the abdomen. She was robbed of her life, and even worse in Egyptian eyes, robbed of her passage into the next world. This was sabotaged by a hurried embalming, the removal of her throat, and the incorrect inscription of her title on the coffin. She was murdered in real life and in the afterlife.
It's been very gratifying for me that we've actually been able to make this person live again in a physical sense when we've had absolutely no access to the body.
I think what was interesting for me was the chemistry, because it really pointed to a rush job.
For several centuries she's been called backed or nacked, when actually what she really was called is backed in home. Merely saying that is to revive her soul.
One thing is clear. Someone with huge power and influence hated her so much.
She really did live in this world of pain for the awful few seconds before she passed away.
They killed her twice.